Hi, and welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner. I'm your host, Tiffanie Devan, and I'm happy today that I have with me here Cortez Brown, or Coach Cortez Brown. And we're going to be talking about students who are planning to go on to sports or student athletics. So we're going to call this session Put Me in, Coach.
Yes, sir.
Cortez, welcome to the Higher Education Access Corner.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I've been coaching for 20, 25 years. Started as a young teenager, even while I was still playing high school ball. I'm ex-military myself. I attended Shippensburg University, played a little bit there. Then over the years after that, I decided to dive fully into coaching. Coach at the high school level. I run my own semi-pro organization. I have worked with collegiate athletes in their recruiting process and high school athletes and stuff like that. So, football, sports, it's what I do.
All right, sounds good. So we're going to jump into the conversation, and I'll just share for our viewers. I met you, it may have been last year, I believe, at the
Yes.
Central PA HBCU and Workforce Fair.
Yep,
And
that's
we just
correct.
wrapped up this fair again
Yes.
for the fourth annual fair. And you always do a session called Athletics on, I forget the title. What's your title?
It's HBCU athletics, so basically focusing on athletes who want to play at the HBCU level and what that experience is like, but we do cover all levels and not only just HBCUs, but that's what our primary focus is.
So what's the experience for that? And I remember,
Yeah.
okay, there's a session of student athletes. They don't always know what to expect. And you and I were just recently having a
Yep.
conversation on that. This session went much better, I think you said. However,
Absolutely.
you realized that some students really had no idea what it meant to be a student athlete and how they properly prepare to go into this next
Yeah,
phase
that,
of
that
their
that's
life.
absolutely correct. A lot of athletes, especially that come from the Black and Brown community, they're not knowing what to expect. You know what I mean? They're kind of walking into this blind. So, I try to help guide them in a way and let them know what they need and to prepare themselves and to make sure that they're ready to compete and be a student athlete at the collegiate level.
Right. Right, because student comes first.
First.
And then I know, yeah, I know for me, we're talking to students all the time, even when I'm talking financial aid. So
Hmm.
I go in there, we're talking about financial aid. One of the key questions I ask students, how are you going to pay for schooling?
Yep.
So many students, and for some reason, it seems like it's more males than females will say, oh, I'm
Hmm.
going to play sports. I'm playing
Hmm.
football. I'm going to get a scholarship, basketball,
Yep.
whatever that particular sport is. But usually it's the football players. Oh, I'm gonna play such and such. And
Awesome.
I'm like, okay, so how are you gonna play? Are you active now? Are you involved? Have you done
Yep.
the work that you need to do? And that's not my area of expertise to know what it is they need to do.
Uh-huh.
But a
Hmm.
lot of times they're kind of like, huh? I'm like, well, where are you gonna play? And they instantly name a D1 school, not
Yep.
knowing there are things that they need to do in order to get it. So I appreciate this conversation. So for that
Too.
student, if you were the one asking that question, like I kind of said to the student, hey, how are you going to cover the cost of your education? And we're talking to some student athletes. What are you going to do? You plan to prepare for post-secondary school.
Yep.
What's it take to get in there?
So what I tell, you're spot on in what you're saying. Hey, how are you going to pay for this? What steps are you taking? Are you prepared to do this? And oftentimes you do find a lot of students to say, well, I didn't know about this and I'm not sure, and you're right. They also always mention, I'm going to go D1. Every athlete, first of all, does not get to go D1. You know,
Mm-hmm.
let's just keep it real. Division 1 sports are for the absolute best of the best. The elite athletes get to go play there. But there is nothing wrong with a D2 or D3 school. I tell a lot of athletes, hey, if you get to say, I played Division 1, 2, or 3 sports, you've achieved something, right? As far as the
Mm-hmm.
the financial aspect of it, I direct a lot of students and kids to the NCAA Eligibility Center, right? This will have all of your information of what you need to prepare to play sports, to be a collegiate athlete, and some financial aspects of playing. As you said, every student does not get a scholarship, and all students don't get full rides, right? So there are full ride scholarships, there's partial scholarships, there are scholarships that may cover certain aspects of them going to college and other things aren't covered. So you still have to get funding through maybe FAFSA or whatever it may be. So this center will kind of direct you and show you, hey, this is the classes I need. This is what I need to do as far as funding wise and things like that. It's such a great site. It will set you up for absolute success heading into the collegiate athletic experience.
So before we dive a little bit deeper into the NCAA Eligibility Center,
Yep.
let me back up because I'm realizing not all of my listeners, and even athletes, understand what I mean by D1, D2, D3.
Yep.
Division One sports, Division Two, and Division Three. There are three separate categories. Can
Yep.
you explain? And you kind of said it, some of the key differences, but break it out. D1 is like full ride-ish or whatever. If you can
Yeah.
kind of
So
explain the difference.
Yeah, so the D1 schools, those are the schools, the big major universities that you think of. Let's think Penn State, Alabama, LSU, Texas. Those are those big mega, oftentimes PWI institutions, predominantly white institutions, okay? So those are the ones you see on TV with the big ESPN deals and all that stuff, and I often tell athletes, everybody's goal and dream is to go play Division One, right? Whether it be football,
Mhm.
basketball, soccer, whatever, because that's the big time, right? Again, everybody doesn't get that opportunity, right? Those that level, you have to be a elite player. You're outshining everyone. But there's then Division Two, right? Division two is, yeah, it's a notch down, but there are some great athletes who have attended Division two schools. So let's think, up, in the Pennsylvania area, right? There's Shippensburg University, there's Kutztown, things like that, Westchester. Those are some really great Division two schools, and a lot of players have come out of Division two to go on to play pro ball, whether it be football, basketball,
Mhm.
baseball, whatever. We've seen a lot of that happen. And then there's Division three. Again, another notch down, but the difference between the D1, D2, and the Division three level is D3 focuses more on academics, right? At the Division three level, it is very, very rare that you get an athletic scholarship. You will more than likely receive an academic scholarship to come to that university. So let's think Dickinson College. It's a premier law school, Division three school. They have athletics, but you're not going to get an athletic scholarship. You got in because you have extremely high grades, and they really wanted you to come there.
Right.
And then there's also, and let me include this. There's also the JUCO level. There's
Mhm.
the junior college level, and I tell folks, there's nothing wrong with going there either.
Mhm.
Oftentimes JUCO level, you're not going to receive a scholarship. They may help you out financially in a little way, but you're not going to receive a scholarship. But JUCO often helps you prepare if you need
Okay.
be to go to D3, D2, or D1. So,
So I have a question on that for junior colleges. So for a junior college, if the student is really a great athlete, but maybe
mhm,
academically they're not
yep.
strong, that's really that's a
That
primary reason
yes,
a student would go
that
to
is
a
the
junior
route
college.
more than likely you're going to take, because and even let's say you're getting recruited by a D1, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they recognize, okay, hey, your grades are not there. You need to go to a JUCO, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'll send you to a JUCO. You need to improve in this subject, this area, whatever, and they'll monitor you. They'll monitor you and make sure you're getting things done. And then they'll say, okay, once you get this up, your grades up in this area, or you meet the requirements to play here at D1, we're going to come back and get you, and we'll give
Okay.
you that scholarship. So
Okay.
that happens often.
And so I was going to ask that, and they usually do follow up with the students usually.
If you're a great athlete, and whatever, and they really want you, they will stay on top of you
Okay.
and making sure you're getting done with. And also that JUCO, knowing that this school wants you is going to make sure you get what you need to get done. Now, again, they're not going to hold your hand. We're,
Mm-hmm.
we're we're adults now once you get into college and everything, but they're going to make sure, hey, this is what you need to be doing so you can go to that Florida State, that Miami, that Alabama, whatever, or even hopefully a Howard, thing, an Alcorn, whatever you need to do.
And so now we're going to move into like the NCAA Eligibility Center.
Yep.
Student, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. I don't know all the differences, but I know
Yep.
there's like a certification thing, there's a
Yep.
profile. What's the difference? And I'm a student that just wants to play.
Yep.
When do I do each?
So preferably, if you know that you're heading towards NCAA athletics, and that's what you want to do, you really want to sign up for the NCAA Eligibility Center as a freshman.
Okay.
Why? Because freshman year, right? That eligibility center will tell you from freshman year all the way to senior year what classes you need to be taking, what credits you need, how many you need, what your GPA a requirement is to play at, because the different divisions have different GPA requirements and things like that. And obviously, different schools have different GPA requirements and all that. But it tells you everything you need to have in place. Your certification, all of that. Now, will this cost? Yes. It's a right around $100 to create the profile. You can get a free one, but again, it's not going to give you every single thing you need. But you pay the $100. It's going to give it all to you. All you got to do really is go ahead, go to your counselor and say, hey, I'm trying to play, Division One, two, or three sports. This is what they're saying on the NCAA Eligibility Center that I need to do. These are the classes. Can you get me in these classes? Right. So, that's freshman year. Now, some people have started late, right? Sophomore year, you're probably still in good shape. You know what I mean? Because you still have 3 years to make up some of this stuff, and you can work things out. You can double up, as they say, on some classes and things like that. You can even some schools even offer you some summer courses you can take that you can catch up on things. Now, as you move into junior year, now we're starting to get we're on the edge here now, because now you only have 2 years, and if you're behind already by a year, it's going to be quite difficult to make up for that year that you've missed of courses and things like that. But don't panic. I would say get into as many courses as you can that the school will allow, that you can change things or whatever, and push forward. Now, at this point, you're more than likely starting to look, maybe I need a year of JUCO. Maybe I have to go there for the year to catch up on some of these classes and get what I need to be eligible. Now, as we enter senior year, if you haven't signed up already, you need to sign up immediately, right? And you need to figure out what I already have, because you are, truthfully be told, you're behind. You're way behind at this
You're
point.
late.
You're late,
Right.
and so you're likely path, because oftentimes, and let's keep it real, oftentimes a lot of high schoolers try to take what is the path of least resistance to graduate.
Right.
I'm not trying to take all these honors courses and things like
Mhm.
that, advanced courses. How can I get to graduation? And so now you're behind because you haven't taken those advanced courses that you need, and things, and level twos and level three courses that you need. So you are certainly looking at the JUCO level for a year or maybe 2 years. But I do encourage students to tell them that's nothing wrong with going to JUCO for a year or two. If you go for a year, you'll still have 3 or 4 years of eligibility. You go for two
Mhm.
years, you'll have 3 years of eligibility, and you can still redshirt a year, so you still have technically 4 years.
Okay.
So that center literally is your, I kind of call it your passport to college, right? So it's going to give you every single thing you need to compete. It's going to tell you your core classes you need, everything, and your counselors will understand that, right? So I highly encourage them to really get started, please. Freshman year, sophomore year at the latest, junior, senior year, get in there, get signed up. All right, and let's really get the ball moving. But again, you're headed more towards JUCO at that point.
Okay. And a couple other questions that I have just kind of tied to the eligibility center. I've heard sometimes students will say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go take this visit, this college visit.
Hmm.
We're
Hmm.
going to do this. There's a difference between an official visit and just a regular visit. But do you
Yes, ma'am.
have to already be registered with NCA do you already have to be in the NCA eligibility center in order to do that official visit?
You can take an official visit. A school will bring you in, but I'm going to tell you straight up, they're going to ask you. They're going to look. They're already going to look you up, because again, that center also tells the school where you're at, basically. Because it has your certification there for your amateurism, your academic certification, and all that. They're going to know that you're not in there, and everything. So they'll let you come on official visit. But they're going to tell you, hey, listen, we noticed that you're not in here, and you don't have these classes, you don't have this certification, you're behind the eight ball, and they will get you with their academic team, and they're going to let academic team, gonna let you know this is what you need to be here. And if you can't be here, again, we're looking at a different route to get you here. So you can take all the visits you want and all that stuff, but more than likely, if they are truly interested in you, their academic team is going to be aware the moment they schedule you, what you have and what you don't have to be eligible to play
Mhm.
at their university.
Okay. And now going back to the academic piece. Um, my take on things is that every school has a idea of what type of student athlete they're looking for.
Yes, ma'am.
Academically, are you coachable? All these other different factors could come into play to say,
Mhm.
hey, this is the core group of students that I need because we want to win, but I need them to win
Mhm.
academically so that they can do what they need to do. Um, Testing is a big thing. You got to take some
Huge.
SATs or ACTs.
Yep.
How does that impact a student with a student athlete?
School sports, they still look for those testing, right? We know the NCAA has changed a little bit as far as a whole, not just sports. Testing is not as they say not as important anymore, but athletics wise, it still is because they want to know what kind of student are they getting, right? Are we going to
Mhm.
have, assign this student an academic, advisor at all times? You know what I mean? Basically a study buddy, to assist them through or whatever. So I encourage athletes, especially to still take the SAT, ACT, whatever. All right, study hard for it. Go do as best as you can. If you mess up the first time, go take it again.
Mhm.
I do encourage that because schools will look at, and if you score it, even with the changes in the NCAA, if you score well, you're more than likely to get your first and second option of schools anyway. And you might not have to go to a lesser division or whatever, and then maybe transfer up later. So I encourage them to go out, study hard for those tests, take them. If you don't get the score you want, go take it again. And they still look at that for athletics. Again, it's not a requirement anymore, but it still
Mhm.
looks really, really good for you to get into that university to have those on your docket.
So I think one of the key messages that you're saying and I'm saying is student athlete really makes a difference. You have to
Yes.
put your academics first. You have to take that seriously. Now I have this conversation with family members, with friends, with coaches, and I'm a firm believer that you're going to school primarily to get the education you need to go
Yes.
into your career field. And
Yes.
some students are like, no, my primary goal is to play sports because I'm
Yeah.
going to make it to the NFL or I'm going to make it to this and I'm going to make it to wherever. If you're running into, and I just thought about this to students who have that mindset, what do you
Mhm.
tell them to kind of say, no, 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 I need you to focus on being a student athlete?
I always tell them, there are multiple pieces of evidence out there of that thinking being a failure, right? There have been many, many athletes who had the same dream.
Mhm.
Hey, I'm going to school to play sports. I'm going to be a star, NFL, NBA, whatever, golf, whatever it may be. And I tell them, you can look at so many stories of how Division I athletes who were just, man, they were great in college, but then you get to the NFL or wherever and they flop.
Mhm.
And now you're stuck because, well, you left school early, before your senior year, you didn't finish your degree because all you banked on was, I'm going to make millions. One of the stories I tell people of, and this is a great young man. He has become a great, TV personality and things like that. He's an awesome human being, even outside of that. But it's the story of Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow
Mhm.
played at the University of Florida, was one of the absolute greatest college quarterbacks there was ever to step on the field. Two-time national champion. He only lost like four total games, maybe in his career, 4-year career. Tim gets to the NFL and he flops. He lasts a couple years, basically based off his name,
Mhm.
but a guy you thought would have had a long 10, 15, 20-year career in the NFL had a 3, 4-year, 5-year career, maybe, didn't make the money he thought he would. You know, Fortunately for Tim, he had his degree. He made sure he had his degree so he could fall back on that. And it has led to a great broadcasting career for him. You know, I encourage my athletes that I talk to all the time, go to school to get your degree first. All right. If that means you want to stack up on some classes and finish the degree early, fine. That's
Mm,
fine. But do not bank on pro millions, right? Because it may not happen.
mhm.
There is 1% of people that make it to the pros, 1% of athletes, right? And so that is a tough, tough thing to do. We're talking about the best of the world's best in a lot of these leagues, and so it disheartens me when I hear athletes say, "Well, I'm gonna be a pro in this and that." I'm like, "No, man, you're going to school to be a student first, and don't forget that, because as long as you got that degree, right, no matter where your career ends after college ball or whatever it may be, you could always fall back on that and say, hey, you know what?
Right.
I had a great 3, 4 year run in college. The pros just didn't hit off for me like I thought it would. But you know what? I got my degree in political science, economics, whatever. I can fall back on that. That's the important thing. So I do always encourage athletes, please focus on your academics. All right.
Mhm.
You're going to be able to play and all that stuff, but you should be wanting to push to get that degree. And to me, it also sets the tone for the next generation, for your kids in the future. Hey, look what I have. I went to, Howard, Alcorn, maybe in Alabama, maybe at Penn State, and I got my degree, right? So it sets the
This is how
tone.
I'm using it to,
Yes, exactly. And
yeah.
that's what I do for, to make it personal, that's what I do for my son. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I went to college and all that. I played some ball and whatnot. I was also in the military, but it was a big thing for me to get my collegiate degree. I was the first one in my family to get a degree, and it has
Yeah.
really opened the doors for me, in my career and stuff. And I tell my son all the time, hey, this is what dad did, and this is where it's gotten me. I need you to
Mhm.
see that, especially in our community.
Mhm.
We
But you
have to
got to
make
see
sure.
it.
Yes, you got to see it. If
Got
our
to
if
see
our
it.
kids don't see it, they don't know what to aspire to and inspire to be,
Yeah.
so they have to see it.
Mhm. Yeah. So kudos to you for that. And then the other part I talk about a lot of times I want you to speak on. Students will say, "Well, even if I don't make it all the way to the pros, I can get this NIL deal.
Yep.
I'm going to make bank. I'm going to get rich." Let's talk about that part too.
It I will tell you this, as a coach myself and someone who's involved with recruiting and things, one of the more frustrating things is the NIL, right? I am all for players um uh monetizing their name, image, and likeness, right? Because oftentimes you go to college and stuff, and you see it even as a fan. These universities promote these players, right? And they make money off of them, because they're stars and it attracts fans and donors. And these universities are making, especially at the PWI level, they're making billions,
Mhm.
billions. And then you're looking at these athletes, and they're like, "Well, I'm broke. I can't even eat."
Right.
So I am all for them making their money, but it has caused some problems. Oftentimes, there are players who are looped into bad deals and contracts because people are banking on their stardom, right? Hey, I'm going to give you $150,000, $200,000 a year, for some autographs, some pictures, and things like that. And to you as an athlete who may be coming out of, a family situation where you never had it like that, where it's a
Mhm.
struggle at home, you're like, hey, this is a come up for me and my family. I can get mom that house she needs or that car or whatever, pay off some bills and things. So you're excited, you sign that deal, but then you don't realize that that deal later on, they gave you 250,000, but they want 800,000 back.
Right.
They want
Right.
40% of your first pro contract if you make it to the pros. And guess what? If you don't, they still want their $800,000.
Right.
And then the other misconception is that everyone gets NIL. That's not true. It's a great thing to have, but not everyone gets that. And so it creates an imbalance. Well, hey, we both play the same position. This guy got $1 million deal, but I got nothing.
Mhm.
And so it's a frustrating thing because you're like, well, what am I supposed to do now? And it also, from a coaching standpoint, it creates issues because as a coach, you're recruiting players who want to be a part of your program, and not only your program, but academically succeed. And you walk into living rooms nowadays and you find yourself in a negotiation with a 16, 17, 18-year-old. They're instead of saying, "Hey, coach, what are your academics like? I just want to know what campus life is like. What's the program like?" It's, "Hey, coach, how much are you gonna pay me?"
Right.
You know, and and
Show me the money. What's the
and,
deal?
and you're absolutely right. And it's a little frustrating because you're like, man, this NIL stuff has really kind of sullied the water a little bit for a lot of these athletes. Because, like we talked about the academic side, right? They're not
Hmm.
worried about the academic side. They're more worried about where's the money at.
Right.
But NIL, don't get me wrong, is a great thing. But I want athletes to understand you got to be careful, right? There are a lot of sharks out there in the water when it comes to NIL. And also even with schools, you can sign an NIL deal with your school directly, but when you do that, it's like signing a contract, right? We sign contracts to work for employers and this and that, so now you owe that you're beholden to that school. You know what I mean? So you have to fulfill the responsibility that you agreed to. And so there's a lot of athletes that we've seen that hasn't happened, and now the schools are taking them to court. Here you are, a
Hmm.
19-year-old kid,
Being
you didn't
sued.
sign a contract, you haven't fulfilled what you were supposed to. Here you are in federal or state court fighting this major university,
So it's
because you were over eager and your family was over eager to sign this deal. So I tell all the athletes that I talk to, if you do have an NIL offer on the table before you go to college or anything like that, you need to get your parents involved. You need to get your coaches involved, your athletic director involved, and preferably have an attorney, right? Because even though we've all been there, mom and dad, grandpa, grandma, whatever, they all think, well, I can read this and I know what it's saying. But these contracts, let's be real, are
fine print.
written, yeah, they're written in a way it's
The
going
fine
to
print.
confuse
Yeah.
someone who has not studied, contract law and things like that. So I do encourage to make sure you get everyone involved, especially an attorney and your athletic director and everyone who understand what's going on before you sign these deals. But again, I encourage athletes, hey, if you can, profit off of your name, image, and likeness, and it does benefit you in the correct way, and it doesn't set you up for failure later on, hey, by all means, go get your money. Go get your money. But
Go
please,
for it.
that should not be the reason why you go to college, right? Because
Right.
just like we talk about any scholarship or anything, NL can be pulled too. Because they're expecting you to perform as well. And if you're not performing, well, why am I going to pay you $1 million if you're not performing? So don't bank on that money.
That's true.
Don't bank on that money because you may not go pro, and now you thinking I got $1 million over 4 years, for all 4 years, so $4 million total, and all of a sudden they pull that money, and you'd have been blowing through it, having a good time and whatnot, and then you don't go pro. Now you're stuck back at ground zero,
Yeah. And
so
that's
be
tough.
smart.
Yeah, that's tough. So I appreciate you sharing that because that's always a huge topic when I am talking to students. I'm going to get that deal. I'm going to go to the pros.
Hmm.
NIL is huge for students, but I don't know that they've ever really thought it all the way through.
They haven't.
Some of them, most of them, I
Yeah.
think they haven't thought it all the way through. And I don't know if there are folks out there who are working with the students in the
Yes.
schools or anything like that who are educated enough in this particular arena
Yeah.
to also guide them. And I think that's the tough spot that they're in.
a
We're
hundred
just kind of
percent.
like moving aimlessly through it. But the tips that you're talking about, talk to your parents, get them involved, the athletic directors, the coaches, like those who are familiar with the process, and
Yep.
for me, understand every term and every condition, whether I'm talking
Yes.
financial aid, the scholarship and NIL,
Yep.
everything like that. And if you can't understand it, because you may not, make sure you have the experienced professionals there to assist you along the way. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate that part when we're talking NIL deals and things like that. Some students, like we were saying, you talked about this a little bit. Everybody thinks they're going to be recruited, right? Yep,
Yes.
I'm going to get this deal. I'm this top student. And a lot of times students don't realize, and you just said, hey, we're looking at the top 1% to make it to the NFL. We're looking
Hmm.
at the top here, but it's kind of like high school level. It's the best of the best. So you might be the standout in your high school, but guess what? You're competing against all of these
That's
top
it. That's
standouts
it.
in this school for this one or two positions. So
Yes.
let's talk about recruiting and what that can look like.
Yeah, oftentimes, again, like you just said, recruiters come out to recruit the top 5% of high schoolers, right? They want the best of the best at their schools. And a lot, oftentimes, multiple schools are competing for the same players,
Hmm.
right? But there's another tier of players who are still really good. They may not be that top tier 5-star or whatever. They may be a 3-star or 2-star. And so sometimes you have to recruit yourself. And I have fallen to that with a lot of student athletes recently. They're recruiting themselves. They have to reach out to coaches, make phone calls, emails, and things like that. If that is you, don't panic. It's okay. You know what I mean? What I would do is respectfully get with your coach. Hey, coach, I need film, I need stats, I need all of that stuff. All right. And then you put together a package for these recruiters and you reach out to the university that you would like to go to. Right. And I tell student athletes, don't get stuck on just I want to go to, Clemson. I want to just go to Virginia State. You know, Listen, expand, your choice package here, right? Send out as many emails, tape, stats, all that. Reach out all the time, right? Again, get your parents involved. You may have to take some trips on your own, you know what I mean, to get to that school to go. When I went to Shippensburg, I wasn't recruited because I was leaving from the military, right? So I had spent 5 years in the army after high school. They had forgot about me from high school ball. When I came back, I had my package together and all that. I walked to the coach's office, knocked right on the head coach's door, and said, "Hey, I want to play ball here." And that's exactly what I did.
So,
So you may have to do that. You may have to take that trip down to wherever, knock on the athletic door and say, "Hey, I would like to play ball here." And give them your package, kind of give them your spiel, stay in touch with them. That happens a lot. For the athletes who are recruited, that, you see the recruits come to all their games and things like that. You know, um, Oftentimes the coaches of your sport will handle that part for you.
okay.
And the unfortunate thing is, there are a lot of good athletes who will play college sports who are overlooked and kind of put to the back burner by their coaches, right? Because they're not that 5-star athlete, and I deal with those athletes a lot because it's, to me, at times unfair, right? Like, why am I being left behind just because I'm not a 5-star? I still have colleges, that I want to go to and that I can play at. But again, be careful in the recruiting trail. Don't let any coach for any university or whatever sell you a dream, right? Yeah, if you come here, we're gonna give you all this playing time, yada yada yada. Oftentimes they're doing that because they want to get you off the trail, right? I got you secured, whatever. Then you get there and you're on the bench.
Hmm.
But again, you still need to make sure your grades are correct, that you've met all the requirements before you reach, because when you reach out individually, they're gonna ask you that. What are your grades like? Can you send us your transcripts? Who's your coach? Who's your counselor? They're going to reach out to all those people then. All right. And again, once you do begin reaching out, stay in contact, right? If you talk to them one week, give it about a week or two, because coaches are very busy. Athletic departments are very busy. Reach back out. Hey, just reaching out again. Haven't heard from you. Would love to talk to you. I'm still interested. So it's a daunting task to recruit yourself. It really is. But if you're really dedicated into playing or whatever, you can do that.
So
It's
you mentioned
possible.
something that I want to ask briefly.
Hmm.
So you were saying, like, okay, if the recruiter doesn't come to you and you're going to them, you're going to the
Yeah.
coaching uh, staff for a student. You go into the military, you come back, or maybe that's just naturally who you are. You're like, hey, you know what? I'm going for what I want. So there's
Yep.
that. You felt confident having that discussion. For that student who might not feel that way, regardless of whether they're coming fresh out of high school or have been out for a little while and did something different, what are some potential things that a student can do um, to get prepared for that discussion? And what type of questions do they ask them? Um,
Yeah. One of the best things a student can do is oftentimes they have buddies who are playing college, right? Get with them. Hey man, how do I approach your coach, or how do I approach this coach? And they didn't have to be at their school. You know what I mean? What are the things I should say to them, or how should I go about this? Or if you can, reach back out to some of your old high school coaches. Oftentimes, and it may not be the head coach, students develop bonds with their position coaches, right? Or assistant coaches. Hey, coach, I need some help. I'm trying to go to the school. I'm not the best, orator. I'm a little shy. Can you help me out here? So get them
Okay.
involved. Or, I tell a lot of the kids that I talk to, reach out to me. I have no problem, preparing an email for you and reaching out to that athletic department, and I will loop your coach into it out of respect, right? And
Hmm.
honestly, some of the questions I tell athletes to ask is number one and foremost, and I'm going to keep pressing this, right? Academics. What are the academics here like at this university? All right.
Hmm.
I would ask, hey, what does my workload might look like as an athlete there, as far as academics and then schedule wise, because a lot of times
So
that's a
like your
shock.
time commitment, how much
Yes.
time? Yeah.
Yes, because that's a shock to a lot of kids who go to college. You're like, oh man, I didn't realize it was going to take all this, and I still have to study and do, classwork and all that. It's huge. You know, um,
Okay.
I would talk to the coaches about what does a potential scholarship look like, even a partial scholarship. What does walk-on status look like? You know what I mean? And also, because when you want to go play ball, you want to play. Like that's one thing. You actually want to get on the court, the field, whatever it may be. So ask them, hey, what does your depth look like? What is my chances of actually seeing some playtime here? Those are some crucial
Hmm.
questions. And then obviously, what else do I need to potentially come here? What do you need from me? What do you need from my
Yeah.
former school? Is there any courses that I need to potentially, take online really quick before I get here that I don't have? So those are some simple questions, but oftentimes if you have a buddy who's playing college ball, you can talk to them, hey, how do I get my foot in the door? Again, find your former
Right.
coaches, or if you have people like me who do, presentations to you and say, hey, reach out to us. I tell every athlete I speak to, that hey, I'm available for you at all times. Email me, please, preferably email me, and I will get the ball rolling for you. And then once I get the ball rolling for you, I'm going to give you a detailed list of, hey, this is what you need to do, step by step. I'm going to continually check in with you, right? Get your coaches involved and everything, but I'm going to give you all that you need to make sure you get where you want to go.
I appreciate that. And like we were saying in the beginning, every kid wants to be put in. Put me in, coach, right? And
Yes.
there you were really good with talking about some of the different things that they need to do. So I want to recap some of it really quickly. Make sure they're registered. They go into the NCAA eligibility center.
Yes.
And I would even say to a student, even before high school, maybe you're in eighth grade or seventh grade, go out
Yes.
there and see what's out there. Look into it.
Yes.
See what is going to
Yes.
be required. I'm that person that kind of always thinks, okay, let's get ahead of it so that when you hit
Yes.
your freshman year, you're like, okay, this is where I need to do, whether I'm creating a
Rolling. Yep.
profile, I'm getting it done. So you want to make sure that they know what is required and that they know there's a difference between a division 1, 2, and 3 school.
Yep.
And it says it on their eligibility center. If they're in there, it actually breaks it out. It
It
even
does.
has a little thing I know in there, like if you're not sure what it
Hmm.
is, you click on it and it gives you more information. So for every student and even their parents, I think it's a good idea for them to
Yep.
go in so that it's easier for them to help navigate this whole
Absolutely.
process with them. The other part, those NIL deals we talked about, make sure every student is looking at it realistically. I would
Yes.
just say, so to speak, be realistic about that whole process because there are a lot of pros and cons to it. There's a lot of terms and conditions, and you need students to be well educated and don't expect to get one because it doesn't always happen. You're not always
Yes,
going to
ma'am.
necessarily make it to the pros. Also, and here's the one part that I do want you to kind of say for that student who just needs a little bit of advice, or you would give some advice to them because a lot of times we're talking, okay, academics have to be on point. Athletically, you have to be on point. But let's talk about character because coaches also look at
Ooh.
character of
Ooh.
a student athlete, because
Yes.
again, they need you to represent their brand, meaning
Absolutely.
their school,
Hmm.
their coach, the coaches have, I'm thinking, an idea, like we said,
Yep.
student. What are some things, whether it's professionalism, whether it's social media, whatever, what are some of those things that you want to say student athletes need to be mindful of so that they don't do anything to
Yeah.
damage their own character or brand?
I'm glad you brought that up because that's such a major thing. every university is looking for an upstanding student athlete, right? And I encourage athletes to, like you said, be careful of your social media. There's nothing that you post that goes away. It's
Mhm.
always there and it can always be found,
Yep.
you know. And so I tell athletes, you have to be mindful of the things you say, the things you post, because even though it may have been when you were 13, 14 years old, 16, 17 years old, it can always come back to get you. Like you said,
Yep.
character, you know, they want someone who shows, you know, honor, courage, integrity, you know what I mean, selfless service. You know, they want to bring somebody in who's going to say, you know what, I'm going to represent Alcorn, you know, at the very best that I can, you know, as a great, outstanding community person and things like that. Um, the social media and things has really gotten a lot of great athletes into trouble. And
Yes.
in this day and age, no university wants to bring that attention onto themselves. So, what I will say to a lot of athletes and ones who are going to listen and hear this, you know, please think before you press send. That just think about it. Think about it, look over it again, and ask yourself, if I'm a coach, if I'm a university, would I want this person representing me? You know, just think about it. You know what I'm saying? And I know that we have all, nobody's perfect. We've all done foolish things. You know, I've had things come back to bite me and like, man, what was I thinking as a teenager?
Right.
You know, but don't ruin your chances, you know, because you're trying to be funny. You
Right.
know what I mean? Or you're trying to be cool and popular or try to go viral. You know what I'm saying? Don't do yourself like that. Don't set yourself back already like that. All right,
Mhm.
because you're going to get questioned about it. You're going to, and you know, here's the funny thing. I tell a lot of athletes, it may not even be the university who finds it. It could be just someone, you know what? Hey man, I see they're looking to recruit this player or whatever like that. Let me go check out their Twitter, or X as they call it now, their
Right.
Facebook, Instagram, and all of a sudden, oh my goodness, what was this from 3 years ago? And you
Right.
know, things like, and that comes back a lot. And a lot of kids and athletes, they think, oh, I didn't know that was gonna come. Yes,
Yeah. I
yes,
tell students that all the time. And give them two pieces of advice. The one is like when I'm talking to them, just for getting into a school or a scholarship opportunity, athletics, and even for employment. I always say, if there is something out there, or you're contemplating putting something out there, think twice and just kind of like
yes,
take out your phones and hand it
yeah,
over to your parent, your guardian,
yes.
someone that you respect. And
That's
if
great
you are
advice.
comfortable with them just scrolling through everything, then you're
Yep,
probably in a good space. But if it's
yep,
something you'd be ashamed of, if you saw
yep,
someone that you respected well saw
yep.
it, whether it's a pastor, whether it's a coach, whether it's
Oh
a
yeah,
parent, then it shouldn't be out there. And then the other piece of advice I always say is, if you don't believe me, do a Google search on
yep,
athlete who lost a deal based off of this, person who lost an
yep,
opportunity or employment, and it's thousands upon
yep,
thousands upon
yep,
thousands of real life examples where a student scholarship was pulled, a student, got kicked off of the team based off of the things that they put out there
yep.
on social media, because the organizations are saying what you're saying out here does not represent us. So
That
you are
that
not a part
pastor
of our
one is a
culture.
good one. That
Yeah.
pastor one is a really good one because my parents are pastors,
Okay.
you know, and so even now as a 36-year-old grown man, you know, before I post anything, I always, especially if I'm like in an angry mood or something, or it could be a little controversial, you know, whatever. I always think to myself, man, what would my mom and stepdad think? You know, do I want them to see this? You know,
Right.
because I know I'm gonna get a call, you
Right.
know, and even
Right.
my pastor at my own church, he'll call me, what are you doing? You know, and so that's a really good one, you know. And again, if you're not a religious person, you know, as you said, I like the whole, hey, give it to your mom and dad. Let's see what
Yeah.
they think. You know what I mean? If you're comfortable with them seeing that
Mhm.
or whatever going through it, then you're good. You know, but you're right, that's great
And then
advice.
if I ask,
Absolutely.
yeah, and when I ask that question of students, I'm like, take your phones out right now. Would you hand it over? Sometimes
Yes.
someone are like, mm. And
Yeah.
then some of them will say, yeah. And I'm like, are y'all saying that because your parents are in the room? And
Yep.
so they'll chuckle, but they get the point. And
Yes, yes.
I think for students, they also have to understand they are their own brand. So they're
Yes,
protecting their brands because they're building their own character. You're going to turn into an adult. And who do you
absolutely.
want to represent yourself as? You know, so you got to really be
100%.
mindful and be careful when you do those things. So I think that's great advice as well. And I think the last part um, would be making sure that once a student athlete does
Yes,
get there, that they take advantage of the opportunities,
have
and
to.
that when they're working with their coaching staff, they can't go in it as the know-it-all. They're coming into
Yes,
someone else's program to fit in.
yes.
So they have to remain open to being
You got to be a
coached.
blank slate coming in there. You got to be a
Yeah.
blank slate, and I call it a sponge. Be a sponge.
Okay.
You know, be a sponge. Don't be a scrubber, right? You
Right.
know, you want to be a sponge and soak in
I
everything,
like that. Yeah.
right? It doesn't matter what you think you know and whatever, who's coached you before. Don't worry about that, right? Come in, soak it all in. I got you, coach. I'm hearing you, whatever. Don't come in and be that scrubber thinking, well, this is what I already know, and you ain't got to tell me this, coach. Okay, you're gonna find yourself not on a roster,
Right. Right.
you know. So
And I think
that's what I
that's
would say.
big. Yeah, that is very, very big. Um, Coach Cortez, you have been amazing. I think you've shared a great deal of well. Anything that we didn't touch on that you think is vital for students to know?
You know, I think we hit on everything. You know, the last thing that I would really say is, again, you know, just always remember you are a student first. You know,
Mm-hmm.
complete your education. Go have a great experience in college. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going
Yeah,
to be a lot of fun, especially if you are an athlete. It's going to be a lot of fun for you. Represent your university well. Represent your hometown and your family well.
make them
You
proud,
know,
right?
make them proud. That's what you want to do. And you know what? Be the standard.
Right.
You be the standard, then the generations after you, your cousins, your brothers, your sisters, your future kids are gonna follow your footsteps. And that's all I would have to say.
All right. I think you said a mouthful and it was valuable information. Once again, I thank you for joining me today on the Higher Education Access Corner. I know our guests are going to be pleased and they're going to love it. Um, and then for our listeners, thank you all for tuning in
Yes.
to this episode, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.